Well, hello. Welcome to Jamie TV. Thank you very much for joining me. If you are watching live right now, then please say hi in the chat so that I can say hello to you. If you are watching from the future, then greetings from the past. That's a bit of a brain twister this early in the day. Oh, look, it's that bloody Pete Johns dude. He gets everywhere, that guy. Of course, that's kind of appropriate because we are nearing the end of Songtember. There are a few days left of September, so if you haven't finished your projects, no panic. You've got a few days left. And you know what? There are no rules to Songtember, so if Songtember has made you attempt to get a song finished and you haven't finished it, but it's made you get well on your way to doing it, then crack on, keep working at it. You don't have to finish it by the end of September. If this thing inspired you to make music and you complete it a little after, there are no rules, it doesn't matter. And if you do need any help whatsoever with your project, if you need to reach out to me or Jade or Pete for some advice on arranging, mixing, anything at all to do with getting your project done, then do reach out to us. If you check out Pete's website, there's a link in the description under this video. If you check out Pete's website, then you will find an explanation all about what Songtember is all about. So if you're watching this and you're like, what is this guy wobbling on about? What is Songtember? Very quickly, it's just a challenge, not a competition. It's a challenge to you to make a track in a month. So, if you're one of those people who starts lots of projects and doesn't finish them, which is very easy to do. Why am I still on this screen? Maybe it's just because I'm talking about Pete, I guess. It's... Let me press this button. No, not that button. This button. Okay, that's better. It's like this. A lot of people start projects and don't get them finished because it's real easy starting a project. It's so easy to kind of come up with a bit of a loop, 8 cool bars. It's not so easy to expand that out into a full-blown song or, like mine, a finished instrumental with different sections, a start bit, a middle bit, an end bit, all that jazz. But the nice thing about Songtember is that there's a whole community of people who are involved in it. Some not particularly experienced musicians, right through to experienced professional musicians. So if there's anything that any of us can do to help you with your project, then reach out. All my contact information is down below the video. Now let me just have a little look at the chat before I talk about my Songtember experience. In the middle bit, right? In the middle bit, there is... Let me just press stop on there. Okay. In the middle bit of my track, where it kind of goes slower and darker, what was at one point called the fart metal section of the track, due to an unfortunate sound effect I used, there is a choir. And whilst I was kind of coming up with that section and arranging it and coming up with ideas, Colin was watching, and Colin suggested a low drone to come in. And I really didn't think there was room for that. I thought that was a shit idea, if I'm honest. But I put it in there, and it sounded absolutely awesome, so it stayed in. So Colin kind of partly co-wrote that bit. And there's also some ideas in there that were Keonra's. Is Keonra not here today? And they ended up in the finished version of the track, which is nice. It's been really nice making music in front of people from the community. I'll talk more about that in a moment. I just want to say hello to a few people in the chat. So who have we got here? We have got Jade Star. Thank you, Jade, for mastering this track. So if any of you don't know, Jade has her own Patreon, And if you're not a member of it, you really should be, because on Jade's Patreon, Jade masters tracks that are made by her patrons. And that's great, because, mastering is it's a bit of a black art. It's like the last bit after you've finished your mix and you've stressed and toiled over all the making of the track, the writing, the recording, the editing, the arranging and mixing and all that stuff. Then you've got to master it, because if you want to put it on streaming services, you've got to get it mastered right. And that's a whole extra skill to learn. And it's one that I can sort of do myself to a reasonable standard. But I don't enjoy it. I don't like doing it. And Jade does it better. So I sent my track to Jade yesterday, and she mastered it for me and sent it right back. And then as soon as I'd listened to it and like, yeah, that sounds epic, straight away I uploaded it to just DistroKid. Within 3 hours, my track was live to listen to on YouTube Music, which is my preferred streaming service. It's not on Spotify yet, or at least I don't think it is. I checked this morning. It's already hit a couple of the others as well, so that's pretty amazing. I'm not actually sponsored by DistroKid. I've not done any sponsored videos for DistroKid, although that's something I may be looking into in the near future. But it may sometimes sound like I am, because I'm always raving about how awesome they are. But that's been my experience of them. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, so we've also got Colin in the chat. Hi, Colin. Transformation. Hi, welcome to the chat. Don't know what to call you, but welcome. No, I'm not in the BAM beta already. But if there's a beta going, I might very well be interested in being part of it. Hi, Matthias. Thank you for being here. Matthias says, you're going to send me a test flight. Awesome. Thank you very much. Matthias says, new guitars at the end sound great. The new guitars were not recorded during a live stream. More about that in a moment. And that's just lots of people saying hello to each other. And Jade says the middle bit came out great, which is a relief, because we all had a bit of a laugh about that section. Because, see, the way that I work, I don't have like a specific approach. I don't really have a workflow. I don't have a way that I do things every time. I just sort of, for me, it's kind of creative ideas and recording and stuff. It's a bit like a shotgun going off. It's like all these ideas and possibilities come at me, and I just, put them down. And I was like, well, after I've done this section and this section, then we need to have a change. I think I'll just go a bit. I'll bring the tempo down, because in Logic Pro for iPad I can now reduce the tempo, right? I can bring the BPM down. So I thought, well, this bit will just go a bit slower, and we'll have a weird bit, and then I don't know what's going to happen there, so I'll carry on recording the bit after that. And then I had this section in the middle with these effects from Blipbox, one of which sounded very much like a fart. And the reason it sounded like a fart was it was sort of a bit of a farty sound, but that was something I'd not really recognised. But I'd made the first one happen right as I dropped the tempo. And so as this farty sound happened and it dropped the tempo down quite rapidly, it sort of made it sound like a very sort of drawn out wet fart. So the fart metal section has now become something a little bit more epic sounding. I'm happy with the track, and that's the important thing, is when it comes to music, people will argue about it all day, every day. What's good, what's bad, what sucks, what's shit. And really, none of that matters. You don't need to take any notice of any of that. At the end of the day, create music that you like. And if you sit back and you listen to your music and you think, yeah, I'm really proud of that, I enjoy it, that is all that matters. Because if you love it and you have faith in it, then when you put it out there, you will believe in it, and so you should. And you have to believe in it for there to be any chance whatsoever of anyone else enjoying it. Anyway, I sort of went off on a bit of a thing there. DistroKid is great, Colin. Yes, it is. Hey, Joe, thank you for joining us. Thanks for being here. How's it going? It's going pretty good, actually. Yeah, I could have done with a bit more sleep last night. My hand is healing. I chopped my hand in. You might be able to see there. Maybe I could just, yeah, that side. I trapped my hand in some pliers about a week and a half ago. I was, in a microphone clip, right? In a microphone clip, there's that thing here, right? So you've got your mic stand and you've got your microphone clip, and then inside the mic clip, there's like a screwy bit that makes the fitting the right size for the mic stand, because virtually every mic stand has the wrong size for virtually every clip, and nearly every single time you get this adapter type thing. And why they don't just make them universal sizes that just fit? I mean, how hard would that be? We put a man on the moon, or did we? And yeah, so what was it? Oh yeah, right. So the singer in my band Supergroup, just a moment. I have stickers in my band Supergroup. In fact, actually, if I just do this overhead view, you might be able to see one stuck to my thingy here. Right. Yes. Anyway, you really need to see that. Obviously, that was essential. He was trying to get that thing out of a mic clip, and he couldn't do it. My hands are strong on this because I'm a bass player. So I got my pliers, and I got hold of it, and I was like, I've not really got hold of that right. I really should be more careful, but I'll just give it a try. And of course, right, the pliers slipped, trapped my finger, chopped a big chunk out of my finger, but it's healing reasonably well. The weather here is dismal. It's kind of like grey drizzle. It's a little bit cold. It's exactly how I like it, actually. I don't like it warm, and it has been warm. I got BAM pre-ordered, says Joe. They say the pre-order price now will be the cheapest price for BAM. Okay, and you're going to send a test flight to Jade. That's awesome. Right. Okay, so Sam's here. Sam, I have to speak about Sam for a moment. Welcome to the stream, Sam. Welcome to the chat. Sam has been absolutely brilliantly helpful to me since I got Logic Pro for iPad, because Sam knows Logic, and Sam's one of those guys who just, he's like the manual. He's a mind of information. There's been a couple of things I've struggled with doing, and Sam's helped me sort them out, and also sent me a Blipbox project, because I'll mention this because when I was making the track, I used Blipbox and also Phase Monkey from Sketch Audio. I think that's right, developer name. Now Blipbox and Phase Monkey, I loved them, brilliant. Blipbox has got it's got multi-bus out. It's got 16 outs, and I struggled with I struggled with creating 16 outputs, because when you are in Logic Pro, if you create them from the send, from like where the send bus is on the mixing desk, there's a limit to how many you can create. But there is a way around it, which Sam showed me, which I will have to include in a video soon to show you all. So basically, I'll nick Sam's idea and make a video about it, and hopefully get some views out of it. All right, so Joe says, I want all your equipment. Damn, you have a lot. I want to get the Korg Nano and the Korg Volkers are my main keyboards I want now. Yeah, I have kind of acquired quite a bit of gear over the years, but I'm very old, and I'm a professional musician. It's my job, and I've been doing it for a very, very long time instead of having a proper job. So yes, I've acquired lots of gear, but you know what? You don't actually need like tons of gear to make great music. All you need really is what you need. in all honesty, if I was going to be um, if I was going to be trapped on a desert island on my own, I've thought about this quite a bit. You might find this a bit weird. I always thought that if I was stuck on a desert island all by myself, I'd have to have a guitar. I'd have to have an instrument, and my preferred choice would be probably a bass guitar, maybe a guitar, one or the other. But actually, these days, I think it would be my iPad, because with an iPad, I can make an entire track without needing anything else whatsoever, apart from maybe some headphones, I guess. So let's see now. Okay, so you're off to work on the BAM manual. All right, okay. Yeah, it is a proper job, Russ, and hi, welcome to the chat. Thanks for being here. Yeah, it is a proper job, but I say that because not everyone sees it that way. Okay. Now we're going to need... Oh, yeah, I was going to say, right, so my Songtember experience, seeing as I've reached a point where I have completed and released my track, and it's starting to appear on streaming services, and I've made a video clip for it, which I made live yesterday, and let's see how many people have watched it so far. Right, well, according to my YouTube on my iPad right now, it's had 49 views. So obviously, I'm going to be minted, and I'm going to have to order that gold Porsche. So my Songtember experience so far is kind of a bit of a mixed bag. So when I started it, I kind of had a little project that I'd used, something I'd thrown together for a demo for Drum 80 when it got Multibus out, and I just wanted to let everybody know that Drum 80, which I think is awesome, has now got Multibus out. So I made this little project, and I thought, I dig that. I kind of like that. It's got potential. So I'm going to use that for my Songtember project, and I'm going to expand it out into this big cyber metal instrumental. So I did that, and I'd been wanting to get back to streaming, but my streaming gear wouldn't work, and then it did. So I got back to streaming. I streamed, and I did 9 streams, and in those streams, I created the project in front of a live audience. Most of what got recorded was actually recorded in those streams, and I was really enjoying it. It was great doing that, sharing it with the community, chatting to people, and I loved it. And I was thinking, as I was going along, you know what? I don't think I'm going to get back to making lots of nicely edited videos like I used to for YouTube. Partly because I don't think they don't get the attention that they deserve. I think I make decent videos. I don't get a lot of views. I get virtually no revenue. I need to get but I enjoy YouTube. I enjoy the community and the experience of it all. And what I've really, really enjoyed is making music in front of people. So I was thinking as I was going along, what I think I'm going to do after Songtember is finished, I'm going to carry on streaming, making music in front of people, not just to demonstrate applications, but to actually construct music, to actually make finished music in front of people. And as I go along, I'll show them the software and how I do stuff. So that's kind of out of this. That's become what I think I'm going to be doing in the future on YouTube. And also, it's my intention that with Songtember complete, I'll start doing the Patreon-only live streams as well. All right, so it was all going great, and I've got all these brilliant ideas and everything. And then I got a cold. Now, I've not been like terribly ill or anything, I've felt virtually pretty much fine actually, but my nose was streaming, my ears were blocked, and I was coughing and spluttering, and I just didn't want to be all snotty basically on camera in front of everybody. So I had to take last week off of streaming. So as a result, because it's Songtember, it's supposed to be finished in the month. So while I wasn't very well, I got along with mixing the track, and I was kind of thinking anyway that mixing the whole thing is kind of a big deal, and to do that all in front of a live audience would be a bit tedious to watch, I think. So I figured like what I'd probably do is I'd probably do a certain amount of mixing, then do a stream, show people what I'd done so far, do a bit more in the stream, and then repeat the process, a couple of times. But I didn't get to do that because I was full of snot. So I ended up just mixing it. So today I'm going to show you some of the stuff I've done in that mix. And there's something else about Songtember that I need to mention, but hopefully it will come to me later because it's gone. So let's just go to this view here, right? And I'll close my YouTube that I used to play that video clip. And we'll go to my folder where I keep my digital audio workstations on the iPad and open Logic Pro. Now I should have started this mouse up, so let's do that and hope that it works. And it's working on the old iPad, so we'll just switch Bluetooth off on there. And hopefully it will now jump onto the M1 iPad. There we go. Logic Pro for iPad. And I've made a duplicate of my project so that whilst I'm showing you stuff today, if I change anything, it doesn't matter because I've already got the project saved. Although it's complete now, but I like to have the project saved in the state that it was when I mixed down the project, that final time when I listened to it back and thought, yeah, that's the one. That's the mix I want. So let's open up my duplicate. Right. Okay. So now this will need to be a bit louder. Let me just play a bit of this so I'll play the end because that's the loudest part. There we go. I just want to get the volume level right. Okay, because the YouTube app on your iPad doesn't have a volume control, so I had to have the volume on my desk way, way down so that I could play that video clip earlier on without blasting your ears out. Let me just have a little bit of coffee and check on the chat. Beethoven mixed his tracks deaf. You could do without headphones, Jamie. Do you know, I am somewhat deaf, and it's something that obviously being a musician has always worried me. But I've been a bit deaf since I was a kid. I was almost completely deaf actually when I was a little kid for several years, until eventually they figured out what was wrong with me because bizarrely, it took them a long time to figure out that I was actually deaf. Prior to that, I think they just thought that I was stupid. Anyway, just checking up on the chat. I agree, Jamie. I'm doing no more live streams showing my process. The rest of the song will be finished offline. Yeah, it is. I think it's great creating in front of people and people commenting, making suggestions and all that, but obviously when you're making music in front of people, it might make you, my concern is it might make you I can't think of the word, like, okay, I might do a guitar take, right? And it might not be quite as perfect as I would like. And if I wasn't making music in front of people, I would probably do that take again. But because there's a live audience there, and I may have already gone for several takes, I don't want people to get bored and pissed off, and so there's that concern. And there's also some things that you do when you're making music are slow and tedious, and So I think, yeah, this is what I want to do as I go forward, but I also feel like I need to think carefully about what I am doing in those streams and kind of keep the tedious stuff for the, in between times. Yeah. I guess, I'll screw up a lot as I go along and maybe I'll eventually get good at it. I'll just keep doing it. Okay. So let's look at this project. So, as an overview of the project, what you can see here is, actually right now it looks like there's not an awful lot of instruments in this project. Now, this. Oh, hang on. Samuel just mentioned Commodore 64, and I have to read that because I'm a real Commodore 64 nut. That runs on a real 64. Is it tracked? Okay, but it's something I don't understand, so I'll pretend I never even read it. Okay, right. It looks like there's not an awful lot in this project right now because I'm using folder stacks, right? So if I just go like this, look, and then here, and then here, and also here, and here, you'll see there are actually 52 tracks in my project. And none of these tracks are tracks that I've saved, like MIDI tracks, for instance. What I used to do in digital audio workstations was all my MIDI tracks, just in case I needed to go back to that MIDI and use it again later, I would just move them all to the bottom. And then sometimes I would have audio takes that I wasn't sure about. I kind of wanted to save them, so I'd move them to the bottom and just mute them off and everything. And so the project would look like it was much bigger than it actually was. There's none of that in this project. What I actually do now is I'll save a version of the project that's got all the MIDI in it or any audio I'm not sure about. I'll save that version of the project and then I'll delete it from the main one. And it just, because on the iPad we've got limited real estate, and so it's nice to just keep everything kind of clear and not have stuff in there that you don't need, which is what I really, really like about this folder stack kind of option in Logic Pro for iPad. Because if I go like this, look, I have to do this with my finger because it won't let me do this with the mouse in Logic, right? So now you see all these tracks, right? So when you're navigating around mixing and editing, all that stuff there's a lot of it in a small space, and it's kind of very easy on the iPad to accidentally move something, because it's a touch control device. You might accidentally move something, and it's a concern. So being able to kind of put all the lead guitars, like, I've got the wrong mouse. No wonder it's not working. Stupid hippie. Right? So being able to put all the lead guitars in one little folder stack like that, and then all the rhythm guitars, and then all of the blip box stuff, then on my drum kit, and finally all the synths, and then I can just open up the one that I'm working on and it just keeps everything tidy. It's really, really easy to work with. Hey, Sean's here. Hi, Sean. Thanks for being here, Mum. Now, do you all use Logic Pro for iPad? Who does use it? And have you used these folder stacks? And is this something that you all know how to do? Do I need to cover this in a video? I've kind of been making a note of some things that I might make a video on for Logic Pro for iPad. I've already done some. The views on them were terrible. I was kind of discouraged from making any more because nobody seemed very interested in them. But there's some interesting stuff here, so I might cover it in a live stream. Is that something that you need teaching? Now, if we look at my project, it starts out with noises. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through the project. I'm just going to show you some of the stuff that I did, particularly some of the things I did with effects and automation. So let's have a look at noises first. So you will see, if I just expand my project like this, well, you won't actually, because most of it's all in folders now. Okay, so I'll tell you what, let's just go to synths, and I'll just open the folder, and you'll see that almost everything is real audio. And you'd see that if I open up my drum folder, my Blipbox folder, practically every channel is real audio. Now, before I do a mix down, normally I want everything in my project to be real audio. So all the AV3s are done with, all the effects, everything is just an audio file. And the reason I believe this is because I think that when you do mix down, right, your digital audio workstation has got X amount of calculations to do. And the less it has to do, the more likely it is that your mix down will be exactly what you wanted it to be. Now, I have mixed stuff down in digital audio workstations in the past where it did not come out like it did when I was playing the track in the DAW. The mix down isn't quite right. The levels are not quite right, or an effect isn't doing what it was supposed to do. And I believe that's because you're asking too much of the digital audio workstation. Also, I think it's just good at some point while you're mixing to commit to audio. No more tweaking of the app. No more pissy-panting around with the effects. Commit to something. Because at some point you have to commit to a sound that you're going to mix with. Whether, for better or for worse, at the end of the day, you need a sound that you're going to work with. And I really believe in that stuff. Now, let me give you an example. So something to back this up. So my project got pretty big. And other than the guitars and bass, which I played in, which were real audio, it was, at this point, everything was MIDI and AV3s and effects, and there was loads of AV3s going on in my project. Logic wasn't struggling, apart from it struggled with when I was using that PitchPad app. That uses up an awful lot of resources. But other than when I was using that, it didn't struggle. It's an M1 iPad, the 2021 11-inch 1 terabyte. Terabyte? What's it? Terabyte, which is a 16 gig. Now, it did pretty good. It did me proud. But I wasn't yet finished mixing, but I got a mix that was sort of, it sounded pretty good. And I thought, I just want to mix that down so that when I go in the house, I can listen to that back on my iPhone earbuds, and I can listen to it in the car through a few different devices. Let's just see what it sounds like through a few different sets of speakers, which is always good practice. And it took several minutes to mix down the project. Now, yesterday, when I did my mix down, when almost everything in the project was real audio, but you'll see there are a few AV3s still left in there. I'm going to explain why in a moment. But when I mixed that down and listened to it back and thought, yeah, that's the one, and then I sent it to Jade to master, it took about 10 seconds, right? And you've seen how many tracks there are in here. There's 52 tracks, right? So that's the difference. That's the difference. And it means that the digital audio workstation has got massively less calculations and processing to do. And I believe that has a drastic effect, because since I've adopted this approach, I don't suffer with this problem anymore of like my final mixdown not sounding like it did when it was playing in the DAW. It sounds exactly like it did. So So anyway, you know, I'm always ranting on about this, and loads of people argue with me about it. But I've done enough kind of my own research into it to believe that I'm right and everyone else in the universe is wrong. Obviously. Right. So summing tracks are good for creating layered instruments. Yes. Okay, so that's an interesting point. Summing tracks look very much like these folder stacks, but they are somewhat different. I'm not going to go into that today, but that is on my list of things that I might do in a stream about Logic Pro for iPad. You know, the list of things that I've not covered yet in videos, which I may do if anyone's interested in seeing that stream. It's on my list. But yeah, folder stacks basically really are just there to, they just give you this tidy looking thing. Alright, so my project starts with noises. It's the first thing that you hear. Now looking at it now, you can see that I've mixed noises down to real audio. We solo that. Now if you listen on headphones, you'll hear that it pans from one side to the other, slowly and slowly back. I could have done that with automation, but instead of using automation for that, I used True Pan, because True Pan just makes it easy. It's like if you want panning or widening, it's the app to use. So you'll see from looking at the WAV, you can see that if I just stretch it out a bit. So the WAV is heavy on one side here, and then it pans across to the other side and back again. So all I did in True Pan was I just put it on a slow setting. I used the most basic setting, and I wish I could show you that, but of course I already committed that to real audio. But I will be able to show you that because I've done this on more than one thing. So now in my synths, I have something interesting to show you. Now this introduction, you may remember if you were watching, when I was working on the introduction, I got this kind of slow introduction that gradually sped up to where the track kicks in properly. So where it kicks in properly is like here. Right, so I wanted this kind of sort of eerie, slow, atmospheric introduction. And then I thought, what about if it gradually sped up? So if it started off painfully slow and gradually sped up. And so I used the tempo track. You'll see that if that's the wrong button. If I press here, so you'll see the tempo track there. The introduction gradually speeding up to hear where the track kicks in properly. And the thing was, because it was a slow melody, it wasn't actually that evident that it was speeding up. So I added this bass part down here, which is made with King of Bass. Right, but the thing was, it was sort of, I needed it to pulse. I needed it to pulse so that it was evident as it went along that it was speeding up. but it just kind of stuck out too much. And I liked the sound I got eventually. I pissed around with the sound a lot, but eventually, using valves along with King of Bass, I got a sound I liked. But I committed that one to Real Audio too. Okay. Yeah. But I think I've got that one. So anyway, I have gone into valves anyway in probably enough depth already in previous streams. But then I thought, well, what if it was kind of just quiet in the background and then the bass gradually increases in volume? So not only will it kind of speed the introduction up so that it kind of like rushes into where the track kicks in properly, but also that increase in volume might increase the intensity of it, you know? So if I show you the automation for that, there we go, look. So there you can see the increase in tempo and the increase in volume for the bass part. So now if I just play the intro, so whilst you can see that, right? So the project, there's a lot of instruments in this project, and it's it's about 5 minutes long, or almost 5 minutes long, something like that. But I spent so long on this intro, and there's only a few instruments in it, but I changed it around so many times until I was happy with it. But at the end of the day, the introduction to your track, that is what sets it up. And so, you know, it's worth pissy-panting around with. Now, one thing I almost did was, for the middle section of the track where it goes kind of, where it goes a bit darker and a bit weirder, I was thinking about bringing noises back in there. And it turned out it didn't need it. But then also I realised I've actually already done that a couple of times already. And so, you know, I thought maybe it was time to do something new. But I've used noises in loads of tracks already, because I'm doing all this kind of, this cyberpunk influence, this cyber metal thing as I'm calling it, and sort of instrumental soundtracky kind of music at the moment. And I'm absolutely loving it. And noises is really, really well suited to it. So, yeah, I'm using it in just about everything. In fact, the apps from Audio Thing, I absolutely love, and as you will see, because I'm going to be doing some streams, creating some more music, and you're going to see them all over my music. Right, I'm going to close down tempo track for a moment, and now let's see what else have we got in this project. In the introduction here, this sound here, snare synth. This one was made with snare synth being driven really, really hard through the Valves app. But as you can hear, there's a really, really nice reverb on it. And that reverb is Black Hole. And what did I just do? What did I just do there? I kind of double clicked on. Hang on. Sorry, I'm just a bit confused about what. I'm just wondering why it looks like I've got. I didn't know you could do that. Oh. So what I did there was. Right, okay. So what I did there was. So I've got my SNES synth track selected. And so when I go down here, right, and press on the button where you get your AV3s up, right, and then you can choose between the AV3s you've got on your track and your sends, and also you can check on your stereo output. Right, now it's gone. All right, so in sends, I was just going to say, all right, I'm sending this sound, this instrument to black hole, and I double clicked it. And then the AV3 itself popped up next to it. Now I thought I had to go to the desk to open that up, or press on here and I can't do it right now, and open it there. But it's giving me black hole here, and if I press on that, I can open it there. Ah, okay. It's just another option that I didn't know was there. Because I don't read manuals, I just piss pants around with things and I learn it like that. Right, okay. So, yeah, so here's a preset that I made in Black Hole, which I am sending quite a few of my instruments to. Now, here's the thing about the effects in this project. I tried to keep down, I tried to limit the number of reverbs I was using. I'm not a fan of tracks using lots of different reverbs. In a normal kind of real audio project, like a band, I probably would just use one reverb for everything. That helps to make it sound like it's a band in a room. Not always, but pretty much. But for electronic music, I think you can get away with using more different ones, but you don't want to be using too many because reverbs can clash. And there's a certain, when people talk about tracks gluing together. Well, if you've got 6 guitar parts in your track and you send them to 6 different reverbs, that's not going to glue. Use the same reverb for all of them, right? And that will help a lot. So what I did was I got a reverb sound to use for the introduction, which is also used in the middle section, and then a reverb for all the guitars, and a reverb for synths for the main part of the track. Kept it round down. I'll show you which ones I used. Let's go to my desk. Now, my desk, if I scoot along here, look, you'll see, despite the fact that there's an awful lot of tracks in this project, my desk is not that complicated because I'm using this folder thing, right? So I can close everything down like that, and it just makes it much simpler to look at. Now my effects are all over here. So here's what I used. For the drum kit, I used Spark Verb. So with Spark Verb, what I did was I created a reverb sound that had a nice clean tail, scooped all the low end of it, because low end on reverbs, just get rid of it. Just other than, maybe some quiet experimental tracks, the weird instrumental stuff, you might want a lot of low end. But the vast majority of the time, if you've got a project like this one that's got loads of instruments in it, scoop all the low end off your reverb. You will not regret it. And also, actually, something I've started doing a lot more recently is also get rid of the very highs. The very highs, that's some good English. The really high frequencies, chop them out of your reverb as well. Because they mount up. They might be virtually inaudible on one instrument, but you send several instruments to that same one and they're going to mount up. And you sort of get this sort of like a tinny, a tinny top end. Just lose it. Now, SparkVerb is brilliant for this because you can create a great, clean reverb with it that you can make duck so that you can hear every note that you play. But also, it has high pass and low pass filters that are really, really effective and very easy to use. I'm quite enamored with this app for drums. It just seems to work really, really well for drums. And of course, I'm using Drum 80 for a lot of my drum sounds in these kind of projects because it's that Simmons sound, that sort of very 80s studio sound. The kick is almost impossible to mix badly. It's almost impossible to create a tom sound with it that doesn't sound great and cut through the mix. It's the cymbals I often swap out for other cymbals. The cymbals are they are appropriate for the time, but there are other cymbal sounds I like to use. But the drum sounds in it are fabulous. Also, it has an effects channel as well. It's called the percussion channel. I'll show you what I did with that in a bit. Don't let me forget that. Right, so that was my kit reverb. Now, I made a video about this for the last project that I was working on in Logic Pro for iPad, which is not complete yet. It's a similar kind of a track, but it's not complete yet because for Songtember I needed to do a new track, right, which is this one. So I have another one that's kind of well on the way to being finished. While I was making that track, I made a video about how to do this 80s sounding gated reverb for a snare. And for that, I used Mixbox. But I'll not dwell on this because you can check out that video. I think I did an edited down minute-long version of it, which covers everything you need to know about how to make that classic sound. A Mixbox is incredible. Now, I wanted to show you also, so I've already shown you that I was using Black Hole, and here we've got Lunar Lander. Before I forget, before I tell you about Lunar Lander, you'll see here that I've got these 4 reverbs that I've chosen for the project. I've got them all on send buses. So you save an enormous amount of processing power by using sends correctly. I have done videos about this before, talking about the difference between using an effect as an insert and using an effect as a send. I think I don't really want to, because I don't. I haven't got all day, right? So I don't want to get too deep into that now. But basically, if you think about it like this, right? If you're going to use an effect, is that effect for that one instrument? Are you only going to use it on that instrument? Does it need to be in line, or could it be on a send bus? And could you send a number of instruments to it? Because like let's say for instance, guitars. The guitar sims that I've used, some of them have reverb built in, which I've just switched off. I could put a reverb in straight after the amp as an insert, but why do that? Why not just put one reverb on a send all the guitars to it, save on processing power, and make those guitars glue together by all being sent to that same reverb. More on guitar glue in a bit. Right, now I've got to tell you about Lunar Lander, because Lunar Lander, when it came out, I checked it out, and I think the developer actually approached me to see if I'd like to do a video on it, or maybe I asked for a code, but I don't know. But when I checked it out, I absolutely loved it. It's like it sounds a lot like a Space Echo with a lot of functionality in it. You could just make some incredible spacey sounds out of it. You could do all sorts of different stuff with it, and it sounded really, really proper vintage. You could make it do background noise, and you could also get a really nice, simple, basic vocal sound out of it, basic guitar sound out of it, everything from the simplest, most, it's almost just about inaudible but really nice short tail reverb, right to the most massive outer space sound you could possibly imagine. I absolutely adored it. I made presets for it. They included them in the app. They sent me it for desktop as well, and then it disappeared from the App Store because the developer just decided that they just could not invest the time in supporting the app for iOS anymore. The return was not worth the investment in time. Now, we could deliberate that, and the ins and outs of that all day. But the point is that for me, I was like, well, shit, because I love it. And I think the thing was that the next iOS had come along, and they just weren't going to support it for the iOS. In other words, if it didn't work on the next iOS version, then that was it. It was done. So you can't buy it anymore in the iOS in the App Store. But if you've already got it, it still works. I've not downloaded. 17 yet. I'm on 16.6, I think, and everything works. So why would I update? But this is one of the reasons why I don't like to update. Lunar Lander still works, even though it was supposed to stop working with 16, or that's what was expected. But it's working absolutely fantastic. So, if I contact the developer, they're not going to tell me whether it's going to work or not on the next update, the next iOS update. So, if I update, I risk losing my favorite reverb. So, I just don't want to do it. Has anyone else? Is anyone else still using Lunar Lander? Have you noticed that it's still? And has anyone updated to iOS 17? And is it still working? Can anyone tell me? Right. Okay. So there are my 4 reverb sends. Now, let me just show you something. If I go to my project, look, you'll see that I haven't got these reverb bus sends showing in my project. I don't like my bus sends showing in this view. That's just my preference. But if you do like to have your bus sends showing here, you can actually do that. You just go to here, you click, and you press on Create Track. This is also how, if you're using multi-bus out, so you create a bunch of sends, right, for your extra outs, and you see them all in your desk, but then when you go back into your regular view, you don't see them, you just see the one instrument. If you want to see all those extra buses, then that's all you do. You just, on those extra sends that you created, on those channels, you just press on them, press on Create Track, and it sticks it in the other view for you. And I've found that to be incredibly helpful. And also, I just like to go through them and make them all the right colour as well. So, and then I end up with, of course, all of this, right? So then I end up with too many tracks in my project. So then I need to press on this and create my folder stack and etc. etc. You know. Colin Stone 16.6, good choice. Matthias says Jade and Pete told me to not update, so I do not update. Good. Don't. There's no need, is there? I mean, if the iOS that you're on works, if everything that you need works, then when you update your iOS, what are you going to get? You're going to get some new icons. You're going to get a slightly different layout of things on your iPad. Your folders might look a bit different. Some of your icons might look a bit different. Security updates, I mean, you know, what are they anyway? I mean, what are you going to get? What's the rush? Because if it kills one of your apps that you absolutely depend on to make music with, or if you're mid-project and just, you're just a random AV3 that you don't use very often, but in this project it's really useful and it's, it's doing a great job, and you probably can't create that sound with anything else. And why would you want to have to start working on it again? It works. It works right now. So don't update. Fear the update. Kill it with fire. Don't sweat the camera. Got a bit overexcited there. Okay, right. So I'll show you some more stuff. We've got now I was talking about drum 80 earlier. I created all of these drums with drum 80, but yeah, that's what I was going to tell you earlier. Okay, right. It's all coming back to me now. Right, so normally I would render absolutely everything in my project to real audio, as I was talking about, at great length. Probably far too much. But with this project, there were a few things that I wanted to be able to show in a live stream when in this live stream talking about my mix and what I used. So there were a few things that I kind of wanted to leave as just AV3 and MIDI so I could show you stuff. So I thought, well, I'll just leave a few things, not rendered, and see if it exports okay. And it did. Like I said, it exported within about 10 seconds or so, something like that. So here's what I did. For this project, I felt that the kick and snare and toms from Drum 80 sounded great, but I wasn't happy with the hi-hat sound. So I replaced the hat and open hat with Logic sounds. Now I've talked in streams before about how I don't really use the sounds very much in Logic Pro because I'm used to using Cubassist 3. And let's be honest, it's a great DAW in many, many ways, but the stock sounds in Cubassist are not the best. They are they remind me of when we used to make music. When I used to make music on a Windows 95 computer and you used the sounds off the sound card. It kind of reminds me of that sometimes, They're okay for arranging, but you wouldn't use many of them in your track. So I'm not really used to looking for sounds in the DAW itself. So it's a bit of I've got this fabulous, what is it, 14 gigs or something insane like that of sounds that comes with Logic, and I downloaded it all, and I've hardly touched it really. But every now and again, I need a sound, and I think, I'll just see what's in Logic. And these sounds work really well. Now, if you want metal drums, forget it. Like if you want sort of real kind of sounding like rock drums, forget it. In fact, Logic, internal sounds, any kind of metal or more extreme kind of music, forget it. But hey, Keonra, we were talking about you earlier. So I found these hat sounds, right? So let's just, as you'll see, this is still MIDI here, and I chose this sound. And I chose it because I didn't need to do anything to it. Let's just have a little loop. Oh, let's go snap to bar. We'll create a loop. There. No, not there. Right, we'll include the open hat as well. Now these sounds, right, they're not the kind of sounds you'd probably imagine I would choose. I mean, they're hardly metal sounds. But what I found with this cyber metal stuff that I'm making is that you end up with arrangements that sound really quite dense. And so these electronic sounds that might be, I don't know, you might associate these sounds more with perhaps like trap or various forms of dance music, perhaps. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I'm not an expert on dance music at all, but they cut through really well, and they just really work with these sounds. And I'm loving this blend of like electronic music with real raw guitars and stuff. So simple as anything, really. I just I got the MIDI already. I was using sounds from Drum 80, and I just simply directed that MIDI at Logic's Quick Sampler, dragged in this hat sound and open hat sound, and they're just going to the kit reverb with the rest of the kit. Now, speaking of the kit, something that I've done here is I sent all of the sounds from the drum kit, the ones made in Drum 80, the ones that are Logic Pro sounds, and some of the effects as well. The effects that I'm using in the main part of the project, which are also Logic sounds, which I found by accident when I was looking for hi-hat sounds. So all I'd done was I'd gone like to my browser, and I was looking for I'd gone into like instrument patches, and I'd done a search for hi-hats or whatever, and I was just looking through all those sounds, and I just found these effects sounds. Let me play some of these effects. So and right, so I found these effects whilst I was searching through hi-hats, and then I've tarted them up a little bit with some AV3s. Let's just have a look what I used on this one and this one. I didn't. Yeah, right. So I used True Pan on this one. So give me a chance to give you a quick look at this. Right. So these two sounds here are just as they were out. Just the sampler sound. I don't think I even pissed about around with the settings in the quick sampler, but I've just sent them to the kit reverb along with everything else, and this one I also sent to the gated reverb because it just made it sound really weird. Right, so then this one, there we are, True Pan. Okay. Let me just make this loop go around here and here, and we want these two sounds soloed. Okay, so just listen to this. Okay, now we just need to look at the desk. Okay, right, so this effect here, right, that's the second sound that kicks in. That's panned all the way to the right hand side. Must talk about panning in a bit. This sound is center panned, but it's panning all over the place because I'm using true pan. So because I'm using true pan, I just left it center panned because true pan is not going to work properly if the desk's not center panned. Okay, I could have explained that better, but I think you know what I mean. So now we go to true pan. So this sound first. So that MIDI note there triggers this sound in the sampler, and then true pan I've got set to do a full cycle through the stereo picture that will take 2 bars. So you set that with the motion control here. You can see in this little window underneath the spinny knob. As I move it round, it changes how long it's going to take to do a full cycle. I've got it set to 2 bars, and it's doing that cycle smoothly. If I change this waveform under here, you'll see that it makes it do sudden changes. It moves to a point, stops, then moves again. Or we can make it do almost instantaneous, that's a difficult word to say, almost instantaneous movement, or here, instantaneous. Right? But I want it smooth. And so what's happening is, I worked out that if I started it at this speed, this rotation, then it would sound like it moved from one speaker to the other by the time that note had virtually ended. And then the sound effect that follows it, because I'm coupling the two sounds together, is in the other ear. So you get this. I hope you're listening on headphones. Right, now, I was talking whilst I was creating the track in one of the streams about adding some ear candy to the project, and that's one thing that I would have liked to have done live in the stream, and this is the kind of thing I'm talking about. So basically, once I completed arranging the project, I recorded all the instruments, so I've got all my guitars and synths and drums and everything there, and I've started to get not a mix, not like heading towards a finished mix exactly, but when you just sort of start to balance things out so you can hear what you've got, how full it sounds, what you might be missing, what doesn't work, all that kind of stuff. Then at that point, I can hear a little bit of space for maybe just, an odd, interesting sound or effect here and there, which is something I would never have thought of doing before. When I was making, recording songs, I would never have thought of doing that. Some people do. But making this kind of music, I've ventured more into that kind of electronic music sort of territory and blending it with what I used to do before. And this ear candy stuff, it really works. So if I just take the solos off, and now you hear that. Sorry, it was a bit prem there. Let me just take the loop off. And we'll just take it back a couple of bars, so then you hear that kick in. Right, so it's not like massively loud. It's the kind of thing you might not necessarily notice on a first listen. I've always liked music that's quite deep, that's got a lot in it. Like if you listen to a Queen track, you're not going to hear every little detail in a track like that on first listen, or maybe, I've been listening to Queen since I was a little kid, and still now, especially when I listen on headphones, every now and again I'll hear something that I never heard before. Just a little bit of something. Ear candy. Just keeps things interesting. It adds another layer, another dimension. Now, Blipbox, I struggled with a little bit. I think because my project was very heavy, I'd already got a lot going on, and then I'd arranged all these sounds in Blipbox, and then I added the multibus out feature, and it was struggling. It was glitching. That was one point during this project where I did have a little bit of difficulty with the amount of processing power, and Sam helped me out with that. And so what I found was, because I was at that stage starting to commit a lot of things to Real Audio. So what I did was I left Blipbox and I continued with the committing to Real Audio on most of the other tracks and came back to Blipbox, and then it worked okay. So then I was able to render the sounds from Blipbox. So I don't think that was any kind of flaw with Blipbox. I think it was just the amount of processing. Now we went through Blipbox and what I was doing with that at length. So what we'll do is we'll just have a look. If I open that folder, and actually let me just go and close this drum folder, keep things nice and tidy. I found the icons in Logic Pro for iPad to be very, very helpful. I think in a way it looks a little bit, kind of makes it look a little bit sort of, I don't know, childish in a way, but I kind of like that. I just like all the things, like for me with color schemes and icons and labeling and stuff. It just, if I take the time to do it, it helps me so much move through the project swiftly. When your project gets kind of bloated and you've got a lot of tracks, it helps me go straight to stuff. I think it's really helpful. So what we've got here is some rendered audio that I made with Blipbox, but what I haven't rendered is the effects that I used to make them sound cool. So there we go. Let's have a little loop around the Blipbox area. And then there, that's better. Okay, right, so I've got this kick sound from Blipbox. And I send that to the gated reverb. Now what I found with the gated reverb was I created it essentially for the snare. Now when you make a gated reverb, because creating that sound is dependent on having the gate set just right to respond to that snare drum. So then when you try and send other instruments to it, they don't necessarily work because they have to hit it with some impact in order for it to do anything. So unless you've got something in your project that's got a similar amount of impact to that snare drum that you set it up for, it's probably not really going to do anything for you. But I thought, actually, that might just work with this kick, right? So it's really, if I just mute the gated reverb here, right? It's exactly the kind of kick sound I wanted. Add the gated reverb. Right, so because I've got that little delay on the gate opening there, I just really liked how it sounded. It just really worked for me. And then on this sound here, I called this sound Sega 64 Death, because Well, actually, it only happens once. Right, so I better do that. Okay. Because it just reminded me. Just, just take that reverb off a moment. It just reminded me of like dying in a Commodore 64 game. Right. So first thing I did with this was, again, I used True Pan. Right, and you'll see the settings are different in this one. It only takes 1 bar to pan the whole way around. Right, so it just makes it kind of just jump between speakers for you. Well, actually, it doesn't jump between speakers. It does gradually move across and back again. And then, of course, I added some black hole to it. Which is there. Right, okay, so go here. All right, so earlier on I was talking about reverb and being careful about how much you use and stuff. Now, in this section of the song, I used loads of reverb. I wanted this section to sound kind of weird and a bit far away sounding. You'll see what I did with the lead guitar at the end of this middle section in a bit. Let's have a look at some of the other sounds in here. So we've got the skid sound, which I almost ditched at one point. It was a little bit too harsh. It just, no matter what I did with it, it just really cut through everything. And I wanted these effects in this section to be just sort of a bit beneath the surface, like they're there, they're adding to the atmospherics of it, but they're not smacking you in the face. And this sound, without this effect on it, it just really sort of cut you in two. Right, so I've still got the reverb on it actually, but anyway, but still you can hear from that it it's a bit much. So I've got black hole on it, but I use this this delay in other desert cities, which actually I can't remember whether I remembered to save this preset. So I used this preset and adjusted it, pissy panted around with it, and came up with my own. And then we got this. No, we didn't. Need to activate it before I say we got this. We got this. Right? Which is absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect for the kind of vibe I was looking for. Plus, because I made the mix on it really quite wet, it took some of the edge off it. That sort of like harsh tonality that this effect had to it. Then we've got what I call the alien spawn sound. Right, now that is a Bliss filter. Again, that's also going to black hole, but let me just take this Bliss filter sound off. I was kind of happy with that sound. I thought it sounded pretty cool, but I thought, well, I'll just see if I can get a bit more out of it. I tried a few different effects, and then I just thought, you know what, I've not arsed around with Bliss filter for a while. I'll just have a play with that, just have an experiment. And let me just open it up so you can see what my settings are. There's one of the nice things about doing these kind of things on YouTube. If you hear something and you think, I like that sound. I like that sound that Jamie got. You can go back and find that bit of the video, freeze, freeze the picture, or take a screenshot of it. You can nick my settings. I do upload a lot of my presets to my Patreon account as well, but you can always do that. Just nick them from the screen. So I managed to create this. And that really was not, it wasn't an intentional thing on my part. It wasn't like I thought, wouldn't it be great if it just went, the sound just went like that. I was just arsing about and it just happened. And thought, that's great. Okay, I'll save that preset. Nice one. This one I absolutely love. This is a sound which I want to play to you without any effects on to begin with. So I'm going to take that off and press play here. Hang on. That's not the sound I was expecting. Oh yeah, that's because I've soloed the wrong track. Okay. Right, so I called this one Psycho. So it reminded me of the shower scene, right? Now, what I did was I used Bliss Delay and turned this into now. I noticed that because if I just open the tempo track, right? So the tempo track. Did I adjust something there by accident? I did, yeah. Let me just undo that. Yeah, that's better. Okay. That's what I was talking about earlier with the problem with the touchscreen interface. It's very, very easy to screw up your project by accidentally touching the screen. And so undo is massively helpful. But unfortunately, in Logic Pro for iPad, undo is not reliable. So, you just take your chances with it. Unfortunately, it worked just then because I did screw up. Right, so here we've got the tempo of this middle section increasing suddenly very rapidly back to this point here where the track kicks back in. I noticed that as the tempo increased, it made Bliss Delay do something really weird. So what I did here was I also went to automation, and now if I just get it on the right thing, put it on volume, right? So what I did was I increased the volume after the last bit of audio hits here. The last time I'm playing that Psycho sound, so the sound has happened, but the tail of the effect is still happening. I shot the volume right up to as loud as it would go to get the best out of that tail because it just sounded really, really cool. You'll see what I mean, what the change in tempo is doing to the effect. Right? I really wanted that to be audible in the track, so I just banged the volume of that effect tail up. But then the track kicks back in here, so I rapidly drop the volume of that right down after, because it was just it was swelling on and on. So although you couldn't really hear it when all the music was back in there, it's there, and it would just muddy up the mix. So I just brought the volume down, and that's that sorted. Right. And then here, this sound, when I found this sound in Blipbox, this is not a sound I made, this is a sound that was in Blipbox. It's in one of the presets. And it just really, really impressed me. I thought that is perfect for this track. It's exactly what I need. And so this is it without any effects on at all. So I just panned it all the way to one side. And then all I did was added some black hole. That's it. And it's just brilliant. And when I have finished going through these sounds here from Blipbox and I play you the track so you can hear these sounds in the track. I'm just going to play the middle section of the track in a moment. You'll hear just how effective that is. It really just it sets the scene perfectly for me. I think it's the best thing in this middle section. Right, so that sound is simply... I've still got that one so on, haven't I? I have indeed. Right, so this sound, what I did was I just sent it to Tape Pro. Now, I was using Imaginando's K7D, and I got a very similar kind of a sound going on. I really love that app because it's a tape delay emulation, but it's great for unpredictable and weird sounds and things you didn't really expect to get out of it. You can get some crazy effects out of it. But I had to remove it from the project because every time I booted up a Logic Pro for iPad, it would crash, and then I'd open it up again and get it working again and get my settings back. But every time I open it, it crashing was just a pain in the ass. So I decided to use a different app. So I'll contact Imaginando about that, because maybe they don't know, but they're fantastic at Imaginando. Absolutely brilliant people. Right, so I just kind of turned this sound from this, which was again a little bit harsh, just cutting through a bit too much. But with Tape Pro, I was able to dull it down a bit, and make it just sound a little bit more mysterious and a bit more distant, a bit far off and much more subtle. Because I really didn't want to have too many of these effects be too sort of bold and grabbing your attention. They're there to add atmospherics, not to grab your attention. Now this sound I called Asteroids for obvious reasons. Just really reminds me of that explosion sound in Asteroids. What a frustrating game Asteroids was. I was terrible at that game. I spent a fortune on that in arcade. I just loved the look of that game, and I loved watching people play it who were really good at it, but I was so bad at it. And I remember getting a version of a home computer version of it. I think that was on the Commodore 64. I think it was. Or maybe it was a Spectrum game. But whatever, I still couldn't do it. So this sound, without any effects on it, is just I'll leave the reverb on it. No, I won't. No, I want you to hear it raw. Right? So this is the sound. Right? Asteroid Death. Asteroid Death with Black Hole. Right? Now, Asteroid Death with Cosmonaut, the Brambos delay. Right, now, Cosmonaut, I think, might be a little bit of an overlooked app sometimes. I know Brambos' apps are very, very popular. I'm sure a lot of people have got Cosmonaut. I don't hear a lot of people talking about it frequently. It's a really, really cool delay app if you like to experiment and create strange things. It'll work fine as a normal delay, but lots of delays are good for that. If you want to do something weird, it's really, really It's an interesting app to piss pants around with. I'm bad at all games, says Kiara. I still play them. Did I hear you say Spectrum? My first computer was Sinclair ZX Spectrum. Yeah. I was a Commodore 64 guy, and my best mate had a Spectrum. And so he used to come to my house and play my games, and I used to go to his house and play his games. But he was spoilt, so eventually he got a Commodore 64 as well. And then when I was older, when I got a job, I bought a Spectrum. I bought one of those +2 ones with the cassette player attached to the side, and a bunch of games. Just some dude I knew was just selling like this cardboard box with all the gear in it, the computer, and a load of games. So I bought it. You know, and for years and years, well after they were the Commodore and the Spectrum were very much a thing of the past. I had them set up, and I still used to put the games on sometimes. And I had them for years. I've moved house many times, and I always took them with me. But sadly, a house I lived in about 15 years ago, the only storage I had was in the cellar, and I didn't know, but we got damp in the cellar, and all my retro gaming stuff was all destroyed. And now that stuff would be worth many thousands of pounds. But it's one of those things. I'm gradually buying things again. I don't have a Commodore or a Spectrum, but I do have some other machines, and it's not like I've got time really. But at the moment I see it as a bit of an investment for me and my boy, because Freddie's 9 and he's a gamer. He's an avid gamer, and he's but mostly he plays on his iPad, and he's got a Nintendo Switch. But I think that as he gets a little bit older, I think he will like looking at old consoles and stuff. So gradually, I'm picking up what I can when I can. So, right. So that's my sounds in Blipbox. And I think they've really made a huge difference to this middle section of the track. So I'm going to just go to just before where this bit of the track kicks in. And now I'm going to play it so you can hear the effect that those sounds and the effects I've laid on them have on this section. Yeah, I'm real happy with how that came out. Especially the suggestions that I got from Kiara and from Colin on the choir part of it. And speaking of the choir, what I did here, you'll see one of the very few things that I haven't rendered to real audio in this project is the choir sound that I'm using from Logic Pro. This is one of the Alchemy sounds. It sounds magic. It's a great sound, and I'm really glad I found this sound. I'm sure I'll use this many times in projects. It's just It's brilliant. It really is. But I wanted it to be, I don't know, I felt like it just needed a little bit more dimension to it. So what I did was I opened up BeatHawk and copied the same MIDI across to BeatHawk and used one of the child choir sounds in BeatHawk, blended the two together and got this. Right? I'm just so happy with how that sounds. But Lunar Lander is largely responsible for just how lush, how magic those two choirs sound. And just before I move on, quickly talking about the choir, I decided that when the track kicked back in after this weird middle section, I wanted it to have a little bit more depth and dimension than it had before. You know, things need to grow as the track evolves. And so one of the things I did to achieve that was I left the choir in. But there was going to be too much choir, right? So I just kept the BeatHawk choir and dropped this one out because this one blended back with the other instrumentation better than this one, because this has got that sort of like slight tinkly bell kind of a sound in the background. Hey, welcome, Kenneth. Thanks for joining us, man. You ended up adding a choir to your track after suggesting it to me because mine sounded so good. I like that, Keon. I like that. Okay, so as the end section kicks back in, I simply dropped out the Alchemy choir sound, kept BeatHawk, but towards the end of the track, I had to do some automation on the BeatHawk choir because when it got to where the guitars kick in at the end, I've just done a stupid again. Right, sorry. So where the guitars kick in at the end of the track, I was really having difficulty mixing those guitars in with all the other instruments and having them clearly audible so you could hear the notes I was playing, but not being too loud. And I decided it was because I'd got too many instruments that had ended up being in the same frequency, which is something that I'm always very, very careful to avoid. But in the key of C, that's very, very awkward when you're playing guitars, because of the way that a guitar is set out, you know. You don't have a low C unless you go for like a detuned guitar sound, and I didn't want that low tuned sound in this track. I ended up with a lot of things in the same frequency, and I needed to do something about it. So I used some automation here to drop the volume of the choir down after the lead synth and just before the guitar kicks in. So you can still just hear them in there. They're still adding a layer. And although sometimes when I was working on the mix, I think, hang on, can you actually hear that choir at all now? When I muted it, you notice something dropped out. And, you know, that's the way to know, really. And then also, what was the other thing I had to drop out? Right, yes, let's go to synths. At the same point, I had to drop down the arpeggio, which is this synth here. So I didn't adjust tal, because tal is just playing the pad, and it's Tal is just doing this. And that sound sits lovely with all the guitars. Oh, I can't show you because I've rendered this to audio and so the AV3 is no longer here. But I'll tell you, in Tal, because I'm not a synth guy. I love arsing around with synths, but I'm not a synth expert. I'm not a keyboard player. I like playing keyboards. I don't profess to be good at it. So for me, I don't feel any pressure to be like a fountain of knowledge about synths. but I found in Tal there's a filter, and you can use it to filter off low end. So instead of having to open up an EQ plugin to wind off some of the low end, because synths always have far too much low end when you're using them in a mix with like a full drum kit and guitars and bass and everything. And so I used this filter to wind off a load of low end, and it just made this sound that sat so beautifully with everything else in the mix. And for me, actually, this is one of the things that makes this track, because it's not doing anything at all prominent. It just plays chord pads all the way through. It's never the feature instrument, but it gives it that retro 80s sound, which is so important in this cyberpunk kind of vibe. And then the King of FM arpeggio, I had to drop down in volume here at the same time as the choir. Right, so I kept it audible. I just kept it audible, but it had to come down to make room for those lead guitars and all the harmonies. Panning the pads, no, there's no panning on the pads at all. I've talked about panning in previous streams, and what I'll say here is what I was talking about panning wise whilst I was working on track is exactly what I've done. I pan certain things from side to side, like effects, incidental effects, and I've got the toms. I'll show you on the desk, right? It's easier just to show you if I press the right button, that is. Right, so if I go to my drums here, okay, so you can see all these pan controls. You can't see any green apart from on these three here, where I've got toms panned, and then further on I've got the crashes and this effect sound panned hard left and hard right. Now, as I go through my desk, what you'll see is that apart from the toms, everything is panned either center, hard left, or hard right. Okay, now this is something I've worked really hard on recently. I heard people talking about doing hard center or hard left, hard right panning, and thought it sounded like absolute madness. And what I've always done is, as I've mixed my project, I've panned things a little bit this way, a little bit that way, and found everything its own space in the possible extent of panning available. I could have said that a lot better, but you know what I mean, right? So between center panning and hard right or hard left, there's a whole lot of other places you can pan to. And I found a little space for everything. And it always worked, actually. It always worked fine. But I never felt like my mixers sounded wide. Now, there are lots of applications that you can buy that make things sound wide. But I don't like any of them. They don't work. They do work. They make things sound wide, but they don't sound good overall. And I don't like widener apps because they make things sound weak in the wrong place, and it's not the right way to do it. The right way to do it is what I have finally discovered. So what I've done is I've gone let's go over to my guitars, right? So here's an example. Have I got anything soloed at the moment? No, right, so perfect. So these two guitars here, this is the same part, played twice, one pan left, one pan right, not timed, no correction done, just a good performance. And that's the way to make two guitars sound really full. Pan one hard left, one hard right. Never time correct on guitars, just play it again. Right? So you hear the width there, and you hear that sounds pretty big. It's just me playing the same part twice. If I'd done it once and copied it across, it wouldn't sound that good at all. It would sound okay, right? It would sound okay, but the same performance twice doesn't sound anywhere near as good. Neither does a double wrap that slightly delays one side. It sounds a bit better, but it doesn't sound as good. Perform it twice. Pan one hard left, one hard right. I did that wrong way around. That's my right hand. Anyway, right, so and I used exactly the same guitar sound on both sides. Now there's a really good argument for using the slightly different guitar amp sound either side. But I just found in this track it worked really well using the same sound. And then here's the other guitar part. Again, pan half, hard left and hard right. And together. Let's put the bass in with that. Now, other than the lead guitars, that's all the guitars I have. So that's two guitar parts, both played in twice, pan hard left and hard right, plus bass. That's it. And it sounds really, really wide and really, really full. What I've discovered is, if you want to make your track sound really wide, then you need some things to be panned hard left and hard right. And the stuff that's in the middle will make it sound wide. When you fill in all the spaces in between, it no longer sounds wide. It sounds full, but you don't get that big wide sound. I was so skeptical. I really didn't believe in it at all. And I made myself do it. And it's worked so well. So, other than my toms and incidental effects that pan across like that, but they just happen momentarily, the toms, you will see, I've got pan to their own space. But again, you see, toms, they're kind of incidental, aren't they? You know, you've not kind of got them all the time. So they are in their own space so that you hear that, you know, that moving across thing. You need depth as well as width. Yeah, right, okay. So, yeah, so the stuff that's panned to the center gives it the depth and makes it sound solid, and the hard left and hard right makes it sound wide. And what I did was, when I first experimented with this, I got things center, hard left and hard right, and I'm like, actually, yeah, that sounds good, but I was still kind of dubious. I started moving some things out and putting them into their own space, and it lost that big, broad sound. And I've really messed about with this a lot, and I'm convinced this is the way. This is the way, right? So that's my guitars. And okay, so before I run out of time today, what I want to show you is, I just want to close this up a little bit and just make my project a little bit neater again. Just makes it just a bit easier to navigate everything. And the synths one too. Okay. Right, now looking at my mixing desk. If I press the right button. I keep doing that for some reason. Right, so I'm sending all my drums to a bus. I'm sending all my guitars to a bus. Actually, the drum bus, I'm sending all the sounds from Drum 80 and the Logic Pro internal sounds and all the Blipbox sounds and the sound effects all to that same bus. And it kind of just helps to glue together all the drums and percussion stuff. And all I've done on the drum bus, because you know the point of having a drum bus is not just so that you can turn everything up and down equally. Also, what you can do is on your drum bus add a couple of effects to help to tie things together. Add a little bit of glue. So I've used two things for that. Now if I solo, wait a minute, if I solo that, will that give me all... Let me just get my bearings here. I'm going to need a loop like this. Right? It was so hard for me to pan a snare and hi-hats in the centre and then crashes hard left and hard right. It was so difficult to make myself do that, but I'm so pleased that I did. Oh, that's that sound I was talking about in Drum 80. That's the percussion sound from Drum 80, which I made pan left to right also with true pan. Right, so let's turn this up. Now, so all I've got here is a really, really subtle setting, really, in Pro C2. And all it's doing is just helping bind all of those drums and percussion sounds together. And it makes them sound like they're working as one. Like, what's the word for it? You know, like they're not each individual separate instruments, like they're supposed to be working together. I'm not going to dwell on how I set the compressor to do that. Oh, actually, I also need to show you this. That's something I've shown in a couple of mixing video tutorial stuff I've done before. Then I'm using Saturn just to add a little bit of dirt. It's a bit of grind to it. That edge makes it, just helps it all cut through. It makes it sound a little bit more like we're really hammering on that percussion. Integrated, that's the word, and cohesive is also a good word. Neither of which came to my stupid old hippie brain, but thank you, Colin, for being my prompt box. Yeah, it's all about glue, yeah. I did use that word though, Right, so I think you'll agree that makes it sound a lot more lively, in your face, aggressive. That's what we need for this kind of music. Now, I've talked a lot before, so I'll just touch on very briefly about this. When we look at the guitars, the way I approach guitars have far too much low end to them, like synths do. You know, when you're trying to mix in a sort of a dense project like this, where there's a lot of sounds and it's supposed to sound really full, there's too much low end to guitars, and they get in the way of the bass. So if you look at, if you've got a guitar part, like a chunky rhythm guitar part and a bass guitar part, and you open up one of those EQs that gives you the nice graphic display of where all the frequencies are, you'll see that there's far too much spillover from the guitar that's in the bass as frequency. So if you chop that off, it barely affects the guitar sound. In fact, it helps if you're going for that kind of like edgy, kind of choppy metal sound that really wants to cut through. It actually helps with that. So you chop out that low end and it gives room for the bass to be heard. Because the problem with bass guitar, you're always turning it up. You're always listening to your mix and going, the bass is not loud enough, the bass is not loud enough. You turn the bass up and you turn it up, and then it's too loud. And it's so difficult to get that right level until you make space for the bass guitar, which was a little bit extra difficult in this song because I decided to play slap, which gives you that low thump, the exaggerated thumpy low end, but also those bright highs. I'll show you how I dealt with that. But also, so the way I dealt with the guitars was, in the guitar amps themselves, I tried to get as close to what sound I knew I would need with the amp sim. And the amp sim that I used was Nambrini Hardball for those two heavy guitars. What did I settle on for this, for the arpeggio sound? I used Rhino for that. So when I was EQing, or rather dialing in the sound in the amp, I wound off some bass and I boosted the mid frequencies. But on a guitar amp, you can't, you're not going to get like with the guitar amp's controls, you can't sort of, what's the word for it? It's not like keyhole surgery, right? So I just kind of try and lose a lot of the bass off the guitar sounds. But then, because I'm sending them all to a mix, to a bus, rather than fine tweaking each channel, I simply do it on the bus. So on the guitar mix bus, which is here, all I've got is Pro Q3. It's the only effect on the guitar's mix bus. And how simple is that? Just chop out a chunk of low end. In fact, I could solo that, couldn't I? If I just solo this channel, right? Okay. Disengage. Now, if you listen closely, if you're listening on decent headphones or speakers or whatever, it's not immediately a drastically noticeable difference because I've already wound the bass off on the amps. But you'll hear there is a low kind of, don't know the word to describe it really, it's like a low woo that's gone when I engage this Pro Q3. You don't have Pro Q3, Colin. Well, you know what? One of the things in Logic Pro that I have used is the EQ. There's a few stock EQs, and there's one that's, you'll know which one I mean. It looks like Pro Q3, and I've used that to do the exact same job numerous times. And what I've tried to do is the things that I do with Pro Q3, I've tried to do with that EQ, and gradually as I go along, I'm going to keep using it. It's really good. It's really good. I'm not sure it quite replaces Pro Q3, but is that just because I think of Pro Q3 as being like the an industry standard awesome app that, it has that name. I'm deciding as I go along. I'm not sure. So that's all I did to the guitars, and I sent them all to the same reverb, and that worked. And then if I just show you what I did with the leads, and then I think I've kind of pretty much done showing you through what I did with the mixing and effects and stuff. So during when I was recording everything in the streams, I did the guitar solo in the first section, and I did the harmony. I worked out the harmony and recorded it live. I can't believe I actually did that. It must have been painful to watch, but I did it, and it turned out okay. Nobody died. Here we are. Let's just unfold those tracks, and then if I make them all a bit smaller so we can get them all on screen. Okay, so in the first section of the track, all we've got here is there's a lead guitar, and then halfway through the lead, the harmony part kicks in. So I needed to do something when the harmony kicked in, because I'm panning center, hard left, or hard right. So where do I put the harmony when it comes in? It didn't sound right, because I've got the lead right in the center, and then the harmony came in. It didn't sound right on top of it. It sounded silly panning it all one way. Then it sounded like there needed to be something over there, and I didn't want to put a third harmony guitar part in until later on in the track. I wanted to save that magic for then, so I was doing something more later than I was now. So I struggled with this for a bit, and then I decided what I would do is I would pan the lead guitar. Let's just go to automation. So you'll see I've had to make, throughout the track, I've had to make various adjustments volume-wise with automation, because like in the later section of the track, there's a lot more going on than in this section. So the guitars needed to be louder to cut through. So, and then in the middle section, that lead guitar just seemed incredibly loud because, there's not as much going on. So it just seemed really, really loud. So I used automation to bring the volumes up and down to make that work throughout the track. I needed to adjust the volume of the main harmony part as well slightly. The other harmony parts that come in just at the end of the track, there's no automation on them at all. But if I just find the pan here, okay, so the harmony part is panned one way, and now let me get this right. Right, yeah, so I panned not quite hard right and hard left, just brought them in a little bit. So lead guitars are in the center, and then when the harmony part comes in, you'll see here I use this automation to make that lead part pan almost all the way hard left, and then the harmony is hard right, and then is almost hard right, I should say. And then this automation here makes it go hard right for the end of the track, where there are more harmonies come in. Harmony 3 is hard left, and then the other two harmonies, again, another one hard left and hard right. And yeah, Colin, actually that's true. I found the automation in Cubasis 3 quite fiddly for a long time, but I got really used to it. I just got used to how it worked, and it doesn't seem like a fiddle to me now. In Logic Pro, when I first started using it, similar, but I've got used to it much quicker actually than I did with Cubases, and it's fine. You know, it's really good. So what we'll do is we'll just play you this with just the lead part and the harmony part. Here it pans across there to match the harmony. Okay, so then, like I said, this automation here makes... actually, no, let's look at the lead first, right? So this automation here makes the lead guitar pan back to center before the lead guitar in the middle bit of the track. This automation here makes the first harmony pan all the way to one side. It was just a little in from the full extremity. Why do I keep doing that? When you're talking about panning and you do this, does it help at all? Yeah, but then when all five harmonies, all five guitar parts are happening at once at the end, it needs to be panned all the way to that extreme. So that's what that automation there is doing. So if I just go to the end of the track, let's just play you this with the lead guitar, which remains in the center throughout this section, because there's a phrase with just lead guitar, then there's a phrase with the first harmony, there's a phrase with the second harmony, and at the end, two more harmonies. I want to let you listen to this with just the lead guitar parts in. There you go. Can't tell I'm a Queen fan at all, can you? Right, and so last thing I want to show you before I sign off for today is what happens with the guitar in the middle section. So I was a bit stuck with this because I really wanted to make the guitar in this middle section sound like it was kind of far away, because we're in this, we're in this moody, weird middle section. So when it kicked in, I thought what I'll do is I'll start it off a bit too quiet, so it's kind of, it sounds a bit far away, and then I'll add to that effect by boosting the reverb up. So the way I did this is we'll open up that automation again, so you can see I've dropped for the lead guitar here, volume. Right, so for this lead guitar part, do you know, what did I press? Undo set track automation parameter. Yes. Just stop pressing things. Right, let me just take automation. I just want to be on the safe side here. Right, bring this here. Now press the automation button. Right, and I just wanted this to be bigger. There we go. There. Right, so there's the middle section. Okay. So I've dropped the volume down for that lead guitar part here, and it gradually gets louder throughout the part. But also, I also set up an automation lane for the send to Lunar Lander. So the send to Lunar Lander for the lead guitar in the previous section was quite subtle. You don't want like oodles of reverb on in that kind of a track. But then in this middle bit, I really wanted it to sound kind of much more far away, and gradually the reverb goes up and up and up, and it kind of drenches it in reverb. So let me just solo this guitar. And I'll show you the send. You can see the send. Gradually climbing there. If I stop it and bring the playhead back here, you'll see how much it's increased over time. So now I'm just going to let you listen to that in the project and see how that gradual volume increase and gradual send to Lunar Lander increase affects the guitar through this section. Yeah, right, okay. What was also very important though was to, once it had reached the peak of that uber reverbness and that guitar part was finished, it was very important to bring that volume down. I didn't do it too rapidly. I didn't mind that spill being there into the next part of the track, but I didn't want that to remain open. And of course, it needed to come back down to be back at the right level for the next section. So I made sure to put this automation in to bring it back down, because just leaving a reverb wide open like that, it might start to cause all kind of problems. So I think that's it. I think that's everything I wanted to show you. But like, how it is, I'll probably just like sign off and then but I've shown you lots of stuff anyway. And if you have any questions whatsoever about any of this stuff, about what I've done in my track, or just generally about mixing, about using effects, about using iOS, just anything music making related whatsoever, just contact me. All my information is down below the video for a reason. Yeah, well, the thing is, Colin, is what I've found with, I know I compare Logic Pro for iPad with Cubase a lot. It's probably annoying. I think it's also natural. But one of the things that is great about Logic Pro for iPad is when you go to automation, right, and then you look in this little window here. So let's pick lead guitar. So I go here, and I've got volume, main, solo, mute, right? Actually, that's for the group. So let's unfold it, right? Okay, so it's the things that you might most commonly want to automate are there straight away. Now, if you want to go into a menu and select something else, there's all kinds of possibilities. It's pretty deep. You can access so many different parameters. But the main stuff is there right in front of you. Anything that you've used or an AV3 that you've opened up, it's listed there. It's very clear. I found it in Cubasis 3 was trying to find where the parameter was that I wanted to automate. I was just looking down a list, like for hours trying to find the right thing because it was all there. It wasn't like subfolded or anything. And so that's why I started in Cubasis 3. If I wanted to automate something, what I would do is I would just put put write automation on, press play, dial some automation in manually, whether it was like way off the mark, whether it was even close to what I wanted. Didn't really matter, because as soon as I'd done that, when I went to automation, it was in the window. So I could go straight to that automation that I'd just recorded really badly and then edit it, rather than going through all those lanes trying to find that lane where I needed to enter it, right? It was like a shortcut to get to it. So if I make a follow-up stream in 15 minutes, you'll be there. Okay, so like I say, I mean, I no doubt I will have missed something, but I'm here, at your disposal. If there's anything you need to know, you can always give me a shout. I really like the live streaming thing. I like connecting with people. I like the community thing. I think I'm going to continue making music live in front of people, and I will demonstrate software and gear and stuff like that as I go along. I will see how it works anyway. So as for when I will stream again, it will probably, I think, be on Thursday. I can't do this evening. I can't do tomorrow afternoon. I've got to go to school. For some reason, they want parents to go into my son's school and, do some activity stuff. So I think Thursday lunchtime will probably be when I can stream again. I also need to plan a Patreon only stream as well. So anyway, I'll put all the information out there. No doubt, you'll see it when I start spamming the internet. All right. So thank you very much, everybody, for watching. I'm just going to reset this project and hope I've not accidentally moved anything to the wrong place while I've been piss-panting around, and just close up these nice neat folders, make my project look sensible again, so I've got something to play you out with. So thanks everyone for watching. I just really appreciate you taking the time, and if you didn't join me, I'd just be talking to myself. Where's the fun in that? That's what I do the rest of the time. All right, so keep making music, be good people. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and don't forget to reach out for me if I can help you in any way. Try not to piss pants about. See you later.